Hi, everyone, and good afternoon. We're glad you're here and welcome to the finale event of the Economic Club season. My name is Kathy Langham. I am President and CEO of Langham Logistics, and I'm also honored to serve as this year's President of the Economic Club of Indiana. It's been a great season. This is our last event for the season, and we'll start again early next September. We'll have an incredible lineup, and you'll be able to find that on the website. Before introducing today's guests, I'd like to take a moment and thank our great group of platinum sponsors. I think you saw them on the video earlier. Let's keep the conversation by using social media. So our hashtag Twitter sign is #EconomicClubIN. I'm excited to be here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway 4 days before the Indianapolis 500 with Allison, Melangton, and Mike Tirico. Mike is a renowned sportscaster for NBC, and he brings to the stage his incredible knowledge in almost every sport. He's a journalist and great connections with the audience. He is the host of NBC's Football Night in America. It's the most watched studio show in sports and has worked in some of the most high-profile events there are in sports, including the Olympics, the Stanley Cup Finals, horse racing Triple Crown, the Masters, the French Open, and of course, now the Indianapolis 500. And we'll talk about some of these today. After 25 years at ESPN, he joined NBC Sports in 2016. And he started, and during his time at ESPN, he was a preeminent broadcaster and did the play-by-play for Monday Night Football. That's how he got his great reputation and also won Sportscaster of the Year. Now, I'm very pleased to introduce today's guest, Mike Tirico.
Thank you, Kathy. Or do I have to call you Madam President?
Kathy's fine.
Well, if you're president for a little stretch here, I'll call you Madam
Good
President.
Point.
We'll maximize that. It's great to be with both.
Yeah,
So happy.
Thanks. Well, Allison and I have a few questions for you today.
Well, I just need to say before we get going,
Okay.
First, thanks for the invite. It's wonderful to be back in Indianapolis, and it's great to be next to Allison. She is one of my favorite people. She is one of our industry's favorite people. Anytime anybody in sports deals with Allison, and I think that I'd like to be here when the statue for Allison gets unveiled downtown somewhere, because so many great sporting events have had Allison's brilliance and brain power behind them. So when that statue goes up, let me know, because I'm going to be here.
Mike.
And I'll be here polishing the statue on a monthly basis too. So
I appreciate that.
And for anyone who doesn't know, if there's someone who doesn't know who Allison Melangton is, she works at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway now and is an expert on that, as well as the Super Bowl, as well as the Olympics. So Allison is going to talk with you about those great events, and I'll talk to you about some other stuff.
Done deal.
So there we are.
Great.
So I feel like I start every interview with 2020 was a wild, strange year, and I'm going to do it again now.
Yeah, it's okay.
But especially in sports and entertainment. So innovation has been required more than we ever needed before. And I'm just curious, as a first question, how was it calling a game remotely? I mean, maybe from your living room and watching it on TV as opposed to being there with the energy and the crowds and all that.
It was different, no doubt about it, ladies. It was a challenge. It was different. I think our industry, sports television, came out of it better in the long run, and really came out of it, I think, with a great sense of pride for those of us who are involved, because a lot of you watched sports on TV. They were still there, games were still being played, and it was one of the few entertainment vehicles that after a couple of months, once we got to about this time last year, kept going. And you could watch a truncated baseball season, the basketball and hockey playoffs, the football season in totality, college half and professional in totality. And it didn't look drastically different from what you've seen before in sports coverage. Enhanced audio, where there was fake crowd noise that was coming in, all of those things. It changed how we do business. But I'm really proud of the women and men I work with in the sports television industry, because I felt like they created workarounds so that the fans at home could enjoy the games, with all credit first and foremost to the athletes, the people who run those leagues, who figured out a way to safely continue to hold sporting events. But I'll tell you, for us, it was odd. You'd be broadcasting a game and then you'd stop and you'd realize that there was nobody else in the crowd, that you were one of the rare folks. We were sharing before here last year, we were just above this, 4 floors up. And I looked at Danica Patrick, who was on the air with me for NBC, and will be again this year, at one point, and I said, like, this is the Indy 500, and we're about 2 of the only 100 or so people not involved in a race team that's here. It was insanely odd, but I think extraordinarily rewarding that we were able to keep the ball rolling.
How strange was that crowd noise being pumped in? That must have been surreal too.
Yeah, it was. No, here we didn't need it, because you've got the greatest Nat sound bed in the world, which is the roar of the engines. But it was odd to hear people cheer, and then you look around the stadium and there's nobody there. Some people liked it, some people disliked it. I will tell you, there was one night, and full credit to our Sunday Night Football folks, Fred Godelli, who is a Hall of Fame producer in television. He produces Sunday Night Football and produced the Super Bowl that was played here between the Giants and the Patriots. Fred and his crew were in Las Vegas for a Raiders Kansas City Chiefs game. And the sound was so good between the quarterbacks and their communication at the line that they brought the fake crowd noise down so you could hear the quarterback and the players communicate in a way that we've never heard it before. And that broadcast was nominated for a Sports Emmy for the audio quality. So it was odd, it was different, it filled in a hole, but it also gave us a chance to do things that we will never do again, hopefully. And that's hear what's going on the field. Sometimes you heard too much on the field. So you need somebody quick on the trigger to kill the audio at a moment's notice. But it was something new and different for sure.
Yeah. Well, we're starting to see people come back to sporting events. Final Four, Kentucky Derby, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. How important is it to society in general, to the United States, to have sports coming back?
I'll defer to you first, Allison, on this, and then I'll hop in with the other stuff, because you lived through August and what it was like. And now I can just tell in our conversations how excited everyone at the Speedway is for what Sunday is going to look like, what Friday, and even qualifying last week.
Right. There's people here. It was great. You know, for every city that counts, particularly on sports, as part of their tourism industry, it's been a challenge, but we worked through it with Final Four. I know that you kept a close tab on us for that. 67 games throughout that Final Four period with people. And I think what it's done, back to something Mike said earlier, is perseverance. You know, broadcasters, entertainers, communities, we've all pushed forward and persevered in ways that we hadn't experienced before, had to innovate, had to find ways to do it. So we are thrilled. We're going to get to have people here this weekend, 40%, not 100%, but we're getting people back. And for you, 3 times you've been here with us in 12 months.
That's right.
We had, so it's been a lot. We hoped we'd have the race last year. We did in May. We got it done in August. But in 19, you started with us with NBC and had the full experience here.
Yes.
The concerts, the studio desk on the plaza, the 300,000 people. And then last year, no one.
Nothing.
So talk a little bit about that.
Yes, I have shared the picture many times. We had our set in front of the grid and knew what it was going to be like in terms of there'll be people everywhere. But only coming out to the set in the morning did I really get the sense of what. And then I'll never forget being on the set with Danica Patrick at 11 a.m. Eastern time. We came on live and you had people on the grid, all the fans in the stands, people everywhere you could look, into turn 1, back down here to turn 4. And I was just overwhelmed. You stop and you take it in. And I've shared that picture with so many people. When you look at this picture, there are people everywhere and there's no place like it. And I've seen it many, many, many times on TV, going back to the days of Jim McKay and Jackie Stewart calling the 500 on ABC. When I was a kid growing up in New York, and you watch one race, you watch the Indy 500. That was the race you watched. But to see it in person and the number of people, and to drive in the darkness in the morning, before the cannon went off to let the folks in, to see the cars lined up all the way down all the streets. It was really just an incredible experience. And then last year to drive in here, my own car, like, 10 in the morning and just park in August and then be here with no one. It was one of those hit home moments, how awful the year was and how much the fans mean. I mean, to all of this. And 40% or not, 40% is still, 6 figures in terms of number of people that are going to be here. And there hasn't been a sports gathering like this in the world. So even though we're in different times, still there's no place in the world where sports has this kind of attendance than this place, than the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which is kind of fun for this week, I think for you all as well.
Yeah, it's going to be great. You've been here a lot in Indy. You've spent significant time in Indy over the years, doing a lot of different sports. Talk a little bit about that. And one thing I remember when I saw you at the Super Bowl all those years ago in 2012, you said, "I've never called an Indy 500 and I want to someday." And then here we were sitting in 2019 and you said it worked.
It worked.
Yeah. I switched networks. It worked.
Just talk to Allison. It works, right? You have dreams out there, call Allison. She's a dream maker, right? We were just talking before we joined everyone, our little lunch chit chat, if you will, that I grew up in New York. I grew up in the East Coast and Midwest by marriage. So I would guess I'm a Midwesterner in law. Starting in '99, we moved out here, moved to Michigan, which is where we live. And I love it. I love the spirit of camaraderie, the togetherness that the Midwest brings. And Indianapolis really embodies that. And whether it was coming for Big Ten basketball or coming for even our kids playing in high school events outside of the city proper, certainly Final Fours, going back to the terrific Final Four in Arizona, overtime game that I remember coming in for, and remember stumbling to get a vanilla shake at about 1 a.m. after visiting the night spots in Indianapolis. Not that any of us had a drink there, but we just visited. We're all friends.
Open again this weekend.
which is good to know. Hopefully there's a vanilla shake waiting at some odd hour. If you see me stumbling in the streets, just point me to a vanilla shake. I'm joking, of course. Maybe not, but that's okay. This city comes alive and comes together around these big events. And it's so exciting. And to see streets named after the teams in the Big Ten, Boilermaker Way and all of that. And it just had a connection with me. And then Final Four is Big Ten basketball I mentioned. And then the Super Bowl was the all-timer. You crushed that, and all the folks working with you. That was just as great as it could be, because there was so much of we're going to another cold weather city, and all of that. And then you realize that I have this theory that any of us who are in the Midwest or the Northeast are pretty good people at heart, because we're inside half the year. So we actually have to deal with each other. Right. You live in LA and you live in South Florida, right. You could be outside, right? But we all have to deal with each other. So we figure it out. If it's cold, don't worry, we'll find a way to have a good time. And this city just really embraced every visitor, and every person was made to feel welcome. And that has continued for every event. But anytime I'd come here, whether it was Pacers, when I was doing Big Ten basketball at ESPN, I would stay in Indianapolis if we had a game in Bloomington or West Lafayette. No disrespect to either one of those cities, but I felt home in Indy. The restaurants, the places to stay. But everybody said, yeah, this is great, but you have to be here for the 500. Yeah. You have to see what it's like. And then, Allison, I got that sense, and Kathy, in 2019, when every time you see somebody that week, all they wanted to tell you was how many they've been to.
Right.
Oh, this will be my 38th. This will be my 42nd. It was almost like that was part of their name. It was just such a source of pride. And even last year, you would hear people say, well, I had been to 34 in a row. I'm going to find, maybe I'll just go by. I can hear the cars from a couple of miles away, or I can drive by and hear the cars warming up, practicing on Friday or qualifying. It just takes over the city, unlike any event connects with any other city in America.
Yeah, the traditions are really important to the people here. And so it's going to be great to pull everybody back in. We should remind people that we're open on Carp Day. So come on out.
So people can still come out tomorrow, even if they don't have tickets for tomorrow.
Yeah, Friday.
Friday. It's Wednesday.
They can still come.
I'm still screwed up, right? So if they can come out, I will personally write your excuse note if you need an excuse to blow off a Zoom call on Friday. just find me, I'll write a note for you and you can blame me and they'll never find me. So that's okay. But
It's corporate skip day in Indianapolis on Carb Day.
I love that. I love that.
Or you could take the Zoom call from here.
You
Really,
could do
we've got a
that.
lot more
Possible.
flexibility
Yeah.
now.
You
So
could do that.
Yeah.
That's good. Just don't put your face up. Right? Nobody will
a
know.
background.
Right. Blur the background.
They'll think it's a fake background.
That's right. Blur the background, show up every
Yeah.
30 seconds, shake your head,
Yeah.
and then off
Yeah.
not that any of us have done that on any of these calls, right?
No.
No, not at
Never.
But we said earlier, we said a couple of times, you do every sport. I mean, you are the announcer extraordinaire for almost every sport. How, and then you were tapped, yeah, Allison tapped you on the shoulder, NBC or somebody, to do the race. And how do you prepare for something like that? Something you haven't done before that maybe you don't have a ton of history with.
Yeah, no, I didn't have any history covering IndyCar or any of the racing specifically. So the good thing is I'm not in the booth calling the actual race. Lee Diffie, who does a sensational job, who's going to call track and field at the Olympics. That was just announced by our company yesterday. Lee, the voice of the NTT IndyCar series for the last few years, and for all of our races on NBC, he will be calling the track and field at the Olympics, which is one of the premier venues. I'm so excited for Lee and so excited for the folks in IndyCar because you're going to hear that familiar voice calling the biggest track and field event in the world that usually happens every 4 years, but it's 5 with the delay. So Lee calls the race with Townsend Bell and Paul Tracy and their great crew. And I do have to say, they've been so welcoming, as have all the drivers, all the teams, team owners, everyone here at the Speedway. So welcoming when you show up and you ask questions and you want to find things out. So you try to just dive in, use their resources, go back and watch shows, and just see how you can best be a conduit for the fans who can't be here of what's going on. And when I come to an event like this, where you don't cover it year round, I always like to try to approach it as though we have a lot of viewers who don't watch motor racing year round, don't watch IndyCar racing all year. So for those viewers, you want to be welcoming and at the same time, not insult the hardcores, because those are the people who are buttering the bread, as we like to say. So it's an approach of all of that. Be curious, use your access to help the viewers understand better, welcome folks in and ask questions of the experts that you would ask if you were sitting at a bar with them or sitting on your couch. And hopefully you can help the viewers appreciate these events. And I just feel fortunate to have a job where I can still do something that I love, and every day wakes me up excited to find out the next answer to the next question.
Yeah, it allows you to provide a perspective that they can relate to. So
You said it
that's-
better than I did.
Yeah.
Maybe you can take my job.
No, I don't think so.
You sure? Come on. Perfect. Sunday, you're here. You got the whole
Yeah.
show.
If it had anything to do with trucking or warehousing, maybe, but.
Then why not? You know, everybody has an answer.
So I gotta ask,
Mhm.
what is your favorite sport to announce?
Well, I should say anything regarding IndyCar and the Indy 500 because I'm here, right?
That's right.
Okay, good. So there you go. There's the answer. But
Yeah.
in all seriousness, I'll share an anecdote with you. That is one of the foot in your mouth moments that helped me change my entire approach to a question like that. So we're on the air doing an NBA playoff game in March. The Masters is in April. ESPN had the rights to the Masters when I was there. And you have these promos that you read during the game. Hey, stay tuned for this next week. So the Masters was 2 weeks away. So you say, okay, they hand you the card and it says what you're supposed to say. And I never really read the cards verbatim. I go, okay, Masters promo, great. Like, well, can't wait. Masters in a couple of weeks. We'll have early round coverage on ESPN. And the promo ends like, there's no better place to be than Augusta National for the Masters. And at that moment, God rest his soul, I had a vision of David Stern pop in my mind. David Stern, the longtime great defining commissioner of his time with the NBA. David loved the NBA. And if you didn't say the right thing about the NBA, David had a very nice way of letting you know that. So I go,
Oops.
okay, if David Stern heard that while I'm sitting courtside at an NBA game, a great NBA game, I'm going to hear about it. I didn't, but it kind of resonated in my mind. Like maybe I shouldn't go there. But then I reflected back on that and I thought, you know, maybe I should just appreciate where I am at the moment. That saying that's now very common for those of us who have kids of a younger generation, be where your feet are, right? And there's no better event than the next one, because the Indy 500 is the best event of the year to a lot of the people watching us, just as the Belmont Stakes might be next week when I'm there. So I've tried to take the approach of any of us who are blessed to have multiple kids who are healthy. I love them all the same in different ways. So I really do believe that. And I think it fits my personality. I like change. I like variety. I like things to, challenge us again, challenge us anew. So the true answer, it's not just a rote answer that I'm trying to pawn off on folks. It's the next one. The next event is the one that I'm most excited for and I enjoy the most. And I do believe that. And hopefully it serves our viewers, our customers at the end of the day, well.
And our next event is Sunday with the Indy 500.
Yes, it is. So
But,
like I said.
Yeah, right after that, Olympics.
Yeah.
Tokyo is around the corner.
Mhm.
And I've worked 9 Olympics. I've covered 9 Olympics. This one is going to be the most interesting because you have stories to tell that have never been told before, in that athletes delayed their retirements for an entire year because of COVID. They pushed their life dream, the deadline of when they were retiring, and said, I'm going to hang in there another year. Great stories to tell. Tell us a little bit about how NBC is approaching that.
Yeah, you said it. It's going to be the most interesting. It will be the most challenging. And it will be the most unique. We don't know where the virus will be in Japan. Japan is not had as many folks become vaccinated as the US. So their numbers are down, their numbers are up, and the numbers of vaccinations are down. So the whole atmospherics around the Olympics are still in flux 8.5 weeks out. But, the stories, I think I can say it in this simple phrase. The composition of Team USA in 2020, if the games would have happened on time, will not be the same as the composition of Team USA in 2021. Like you said, athletes are trying to hang on that extra year. And you know this because you live the Olympic cycle. Athletes really calibrate for those 4 years. Not many come back for multiple Olympics, but they really do plan, okay, I'll go away for this amount of time. I'll work on this skill. I'll work on this. I'll ramp up. I'll get ready for. They were deep in that mode. They were about 80% through that journey when the plug got pulled on them, on all of us, in 2020. So now they've had to kind of hold in abeyance or drop back a little bit to recharge. And at the same time, some of the young whippersnappers who were 17 or 18, I'm thinking especially of swimming, they're coming. And there was a meet here 2 weeks ago. There are some young swimmers who had really good times, and those young swimmers are coming after the ones who are a year older. So the composition of the Olympic team's going to change. How people trained during COVID, athletes who had COVID, who had to overcome it, athletes who lost loved ones to COVID. All of those stories will be a part of an incredible tapestry that you've experienced so often of the collection of American athletes who come together for the Olympic Games. It's different. We see Scott Dixon, and then we'll see Scott Dixon in a couple of weeks, and we saw Scott Dixon last year and the year before that. We've seen him all the times he's won the series championship. The Olympics, you see an athlete once, and then you may not see that athlete. For most people who may have seen Katie Ledecky, the great swimmer, win some of her gold medals, probably haven't seen her in the pool in 4 years.
Right.
And then she'll show up again for the Olympics, then you may not see her again. So those stories make the Olympics interesting. And there is great enthusiasm and excitement along with the trepidation and uncertainty that's sitting out there for the Olympic Games coming up.
And I think opening ceremonies is about 58 days from now. First time as the primetime host, I believe, for you. Congratulations on that. You're going to be amazing. From a production standpoint, I know NBC's had to pivot a ton. They're going to be hosting some events from Stamford, Connecticut versus sending people to Tokyo. And I'm sure you've been involved in lots of meetings coming up. So in the past and headed into the next 58 days, when do you go to Tokyo? And you'll be there a few weeks.
I will. I head over about 9 days before the opening ceremony, and then the Olympics are 17 days. So I think it'll be about a month in Tokyo, and you want to get there, obviously make sure all the travel concerns internationally, you're following whatever requirements the Japanese government and the rest of the international broadcasters are going to be dealing with. But you're right, we've pivoted several times and will continue to. Before I came over here, I was on a call looking ahead to diving and what that looks like for Team USA and the international competitors, the 8 medals in diving. And the U.S. trials are coming up. The U.S. trials for diving are here
Yep.
in Indianapolis, America's sports city, right?
Yes.
They have these great stories of making the Olympic team. You work your whole life, however young they are, to make the Olympic team. And these trials, you've got to be on at this time. Even Michael Phelps, the great Michael Phelps, wasn't guaranteed a spot just because he said, I want to swim. He had to go through the Olympic trials. And that happens for track and gymnastics and diving and swimming all in the next month or so. So that kind of starts our ramp up. So after this week and then the Belmont Stakes, it's a month of all those trials and then head over to Japan. And, it won't be the same celebration, I think, that Tokyo had planned for, but we hope to see 206 nations from the world come together for the first time post-pandemic and give the globe hope that there is life after 2020.
And those athletes deserve that chance
to
finally get there, finally get to Tokyo. Question on the condensed time frame now with NBC. In my years, I've never seen quite the upcoming schedule that NBC's got. So you're going to have the summer games in July.
Right.
And then by the way the calendar worked with the different networks, you're going to have the Super Bowl, right, in January of 22. And then you're rolling straight into the Winter Olympics a month later.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't remember in my knowledge a condensed major event schedule like that for NBC or a production, anything like that. So talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, for anyone, our research folks have looked back. It's 214 days from the opening ceremony of the Summer Olympics in Tokyo through the closing ceremony of the Beijing Winter Games. And actually, it's shame on me, I should tack on another 21 days or so to that number, because the Paralympics, which are also become a much bigger event over the last 12 years and will be the biggest summer and winter Paralympics, they follow the Beijing Olympics. So from July 23rd till about that first full week in March, we'll have all of those events, including Sunday Night Football and the rest of the things that happen with our other properties, NASCAR, IndyCar, et cetera, et cetera. Sunday Night Football, I mentioned Notre Dame football, the end of the PGA Tour season. So all those things will be happening, but those big events, the Olympics and the Super Bowl, all at the same time. You're both involved in the world of logistics and planning. It is the all-time spreadsheet event here with all these people moving around the globe and television productions in all these places. But it's an exciting time. And especially after we've all learned how to work from home. Right. I think all of us are itching to get out there. So there's no excuse not to be refreshed and recharged after the last year. Right. So we get to do what we love with people who it's an honor to work for and with. But it is going to be a 7 months that hopefully when we look back in early March, we can kind of kick our feet up and smile a little bit that it was broadcast that successfully brought America and the stories of these athletes to homes or phones or wherever people are going to watch them around the country.
Yep, it's an unprecedented stretch.
Yeah, it is for sure. And I need to get some sleep.
You're going to be busy
Yes.
for sure. And it's great. I mean, I think it makes the whole world feel better that we're attending sports in person and all the kids are competing again and all that stuff. So it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I had the chance to watch some YouTube videos preparing for this meeting.
Okay.
And
You're going to show bloopers now?
maybe later.
Okay, good.
Outtakes.
Just worried a minute.
But the greatest moments in sports that you announced, there were tons of them. I mean, it was fantastic. All sports. Is there a greatest moment that you announced that you remember?
Wow. There are so many that I've been lucky enough to be around, be a part of. A couple come to mind, and it's funny. One that comes to mind just this past week, we all saw Phil Mickelson win the PGA Championship at age 50 and become the oldest winner of a major golf championship. I know how important golf is to you in your life with your family as well. And I remember back to Tom Watson at 59, almost winning the British Open at a place where he probably had the greatest British Open back and forth head-to-head duel ever in the history of the Open with Jack Nicklaus. And that had happened 3 decades before in 77. And so we were sitting there and we're sitting on this unbelievable slice of history. that didn't happen because Watson bogeyed the 18th hole. And I'll never forget the letdown that happened around all of us when that took place. So that's always been in my mind, but that came fresh to mind this week. But I have to say, if there's there's only one picture of a game, of an event in my office at home. And that's the day that they reopened the New Orleans Superdome, post-Hurricane Katrina. The New Orleans Saints had played a nomadic season in 2005. Katrina hit August of 2005. So they were a visiting home team around the country, mostly in the Southeast, for the better part of the 2005 season. And then 2006, they played their first 2 games on the road. They weren't supposed to be very good. They won both games. Sean Payton was their first-year head coach, and Purdue's own Drew Brees was their quarterback, signed as a free agent after leaving the then San Diego Chargers. And they come home to the Superdome, and it was this celebration that showed the world that New Orleans was reopened for business. And we remember what Katrina did. It just devastated the city. They lost business, they lost population. A lot of folks moved to Baton Rouge or Houston, and they have never really recovered the population numbers. Businesses, the French Quarter, the Central Business District all started to come back a little bit, but we had Colin Powell, we had President Bush, we had generals, first responders, U2, Green Day, live concert. This was a regular season NFL game. It was week 3 of the NFL season, and it was just an incredible collection of folks who were there to support New Orleans. The Saints blocked a field goal on the very first drive, and I've never heard a stadium, an arena, or a venue any louder in my life, because it was one for the city. They won that game, went on to make the NFC Championship game that year. And then I won't remind Colts fans that the Saints did eventually win a Super Bowl somewhere down the line after that, but we'll skip that line of the story.
Yeah.
But that's the one. If you had to ask me of all, right, exactly. If you had to ask me of all the events, if there's one, it was that one, because that was the night, Kathy, that I'll say that sports to me was not just the toy shop. It was part of our fabric and part of the culture of our cities, like you were talking about before, Allison, the great pride that Indianapolis takes to the 500. The ballet or the orchestra, they don't run around with Indianapolis or New Orleans on the front of their uniforms or their tuxedos or dresses. But football teams, sports teams, they go around the country representing your city. And to me, that night, the civic connection of a team and a city, or in this case here in Indy, an event in the city, really struck home for me forever. So that's the one that I will forever remember as being part of something that was just a little more special than the others.
Yeah. Sounds great. We're going to have to send Mike a picture of the Speedway right after the race. So he's got another picture in his office.
I've got the picture from the set with Danica, just looking back and looking at a sea of people going, what the heck is this? Is unbelievable. So
no, I think that's right. And again, people align with sports and their cities and states and all that, so it makes a big difference.
Yeah, it's not the most important thing. We all get that. I mean, for those of us who work in the industry, it's our lives, it's our professions. But you can love the Colts, you love IU hoops,
right?
Right now, IU football has been amazing. Whether they win or lose, for the most part, doesn't impact the meal that your family eats, or what your day is going to be like with the rest of your life or your business, or those types of things. But it does have a sense of that tide lifting all boats. When your team wins, it's great to be a part of something you can celebrate. And sports is a great escape. It really is. And for those of us for whom it's business, I don't think ever lose sight of that, right, or an appreciation that the folks who give their free time, their money to support sporting events, they're part of what keeps our economy going. I always like to say they're our customers, and we've got to treat them right. And I know you folks do when they come here, no matter what time of year they come here, the doubleheader with NASCAR, no matter what it is, the Grand Prix, when they come here, they're treated like we care about you. And that's important. That's valuable.
And sports bring, in our community for the Super Bowl, it's what brought people together, working alongside together for the same thing. It's why I love the Olympics, because when else do all those countries get together on the same turf, neutral territory without all these agendas? So the Olympics is the reason I love it so much is that.
And you've heard this from your time around the Olympics, the number of nations that compete in the Olympics is greater than the number of nations that come together when the UN General Assembly assembles in New York. There are 206 countries who come to the Olympics. There are fewer that come to the UN General Assembly. That sentence alone, when you just detach and let that soak in, that's so powerful. And yes, sports is screwed up in a lot of ways. Right? We could sit here and do 5 hours on that, but man, it's really fun to be involved in something. I'll tell you this: there's an athlete we just talked about on one of our getting ready for the Olympic calls from Indonesia, who has a chance to be an Olympic gold medalist and might be a favorite in an event. And I just started thinking, there's somebody, and the top US athlete is in California, somebody in California who's training to try to beat somebody from Indonesia. And every 4 years, usually this year 5, like they're going to come together and find out who's the best in the world. And your company may be the best, your operation may be the best, we may be a part of something that's the best, but we can't really subjectively decide that. In sports, they can.
Yeah.
And that's the magic of the Olympics. It brings the world together in a different way.
And the industry, the television industry changed a lot in the last 2-3 years related to streaming and platforms and the opportunity to see things. So stories like that might not be on the primetime coverage, maybe on Peacock, your new streaming network, and different opportunities for that. You can tell more stories because people have more access to the content.
Absolutely. And I'll give you a great example of that. And it kind of brings that point home. I was home in Michigan this past week, and there were when the teams were practicing before qualifying last week, there were 5-hour shows on Peacock. And if you love IndyCar, you got as much as you could ask for from the second that the track was open for practice until the end. That was live on Peacock, and you can watch it on your phone. You can watch it I watched it on my computer. I had it up on the desktop in the office as I was working on my laptop, and I was on a Zoom call. But don't tell the people on the Zoom call that I was kind of watching qualifying.
Was that the prep call with us?
Oh, you noticed. I'm so sorry. I guess I didn't see that past you, or I put my foot in my mouth. But that's a different world, and now that's going to happen this year with the Olympics,
Right.
and how you said how it's changed. If you love team handball, which is a sport that the U.S. doesn't compete in at the Olympic level, we haven't qualified for it. But if you love team handball, you can watch every game of team handball, men or women, on your phone, and that is a drastic difference in what the Olympics were. Go back to 2006, to 2008, 2012. It's just continued to evolve. I think we've totaled 7,000 plus hours of coverage for those 17 days of the Olympics. So if you can't sleep, we got something for you. Promise
And
you
for
that.
someone like you who years ago would have just prepared for the primetime broadcast, now you've got the whole day to prepare for other things, the streaming, the Today Show segments that you do, all the different things. So you're on 20 hours a day at the Olympics.
A little bit, yeah. It's get ready for this, get ready for that, bounce around, and maybe there'll be a live track race on the Today Show when you show up there, or Peacock may be doing something. Can you go on and promote what's going to be on the primetime show, or do a little bit of an insert for their show? Look, our world's changed, and we carry this amazing little thing in our purses or our pockets that bring us everywhere in the world. These are our phones, and whether it's streaming or video calls or all this, the demand is to be more connected. We would all be doing this in a room someplace, in other times, but here we are connecting with each other and talking about the city and the value of those types of things. And you might be watching at your desk or at home. So we have to change with the world, otherwise it will pass us by. So we're trying to do that best we can.
Well, you've had the chance to meet a ton of sports icons, the best at the top of their game. And if you were talking to a young person and you were suggesting somebody in the world of sports for them to emulate, who would that be?
Well, executive is Allison. There's no doubt about that.
That's true.
We know that, but we all know that. That's a given. So I'm going to give you an answer that has an Indianapolis tie to it, because I heard a similar question asked of this person, and I walked away with, wow, that's the right answer. And Tony Dungy is one of the people who I would say, if we could all be like Tony Dungy, we'd have a much better world, 1,000% better world. Tony gave an answer of a more current athlete who he had the pleasure of coaching in Tampa. work done. And that really resonated with me. Warwick's story, growing up in Louisiana, mom, police officer, killed in the line of duty. And at age 18, Warwick had to take over and be the leader of the family, younger siblings. And he had become the man of the family while trying to pursue a career in football and going to Florida State, being an exceptional player and on through the National Football League and being a Pro Bowler in the NFL. Subsequent to his exceptional football career, and this was a small guy. We're not talking about a can't miss physical prospect. And Warwick always overcame odds that were long on and off the field. Warwick has made sure that he has worked to provide houses, places to live for moms who are in similar type situations as his mom was, or for families who had those hardships, and has not just done that when he was playing, has continued that and expanded that with these homes for the holidays, around the holiday season, every year since he's been out of the year. Just an extraordinary connection of a human being, an event that changed his life and that he has made into a positive for so many other people, when just the mere thought of being around it has to bring such pain to your life, because your mom, who should still be around, is no longer with us. What a person, what an athlete. And if there's an example of how sports can be a vehicle to positive societal impact and change, it's Warwick Dunn. And if you don't know his story, go check it out. And then all of you in Indianapolis who've been around for more than a minute know when we went from basketball country to football country, in addition to racing country. And Tony Dungy and Peyton Manning were the two people who brought football to the level that this city hosted a Super Bowl. And you see all those horseshoes from Colts fans. So Tony's one of the all-time greats. And I'm lucky to get to sit next to Tony on Sunday Night Football on Football Night in America. And this year we'll have Drew Brees on the other side of me.
Oh, goodness.
Drew joins. So I will be surrounded. I've got Purdue, I've got Colts. So we've got, and you got a guy who loves Indianapolis too. So we've got you covered here. We're hugging the Hoosier State.
We like that. Perfect. Allison, did you have anything to do with that?
No.
should take
I'd like to take credit for that, but I'm not going to.
Maybe I'm thinking more of college sports than professional, but either is open. Who would you identify as an athlete with the most unrealized potential?
That's a great one. Unrealized potential is one of those dangerous things that you never.
That's dangerous.
You're never really sure who that is. That next great one, right? We all want to tap into the next great one. You know, I kind of steer away from football because it's such a team game. You have to go to the individual games, and I'm going to go pivot over to golf a little bit. And Justin Thomas has won in golf, has won a major, and he won the Players Championship this year. And I think we've seen all of his potential. I think he's this close to being as good as any player on the PGA Tour. He's an exceptional athlete, terrific guy. Grew up in Kentucky. His dad and his granddad were both PGA professionals, so he's been around the game. I love the way he carries himself. I think Justin is about this close from really becoming that top of the line golfer here in the US and globally. He's top 10 in the world, but I think he's got it all. It's just a matter of putting it together at the right moment in the biggest events. And I think you're going to walk around and say he's player of the year for a couple of years. So that'd be the one I kind of lean on right now, because you got to go in individual, because team sports, we can always blame the coach or somebody else.
Right. Good point. Well, I'm going to squeeze one more question.
Okay.
Gambling. That has become a really big thing. Sports betting,
sure has.
sports book, all that sort of thing. What is your perspective on that?
Yeah, we're speaking in a theme and with a title and a group that's an economic group, right?
Right, true.
It's changing the economy of sports, I think. The assumption is, if people, all this legal wagering where, I can be on my phone, on my couch, and I can bet on the total of the second half in a Pacers-Pistons game, instead of dealing with Vinny on the corner, right? I think there's a finite amount of money that is wagered on sports. Maybe the pot will grow a little bit with the access. I have concerns that we as an industry have embraced it too much without recognition of the problems it can lead to. Sports gambling is not the be all end all answer. There are many people who have seen their lives impacted significantly in a negative way from gambling. So I do have concerns that as an industry, as we've looked at, wow, if people can wager on a race or on a motor race, not a horse race, which has been legal for quite some time, or hockey or basketball or the second half of a football game, that maybe we're just going to grow the pie and more people will be interested longer in this society where we're striving to grab people's attention a bit longer. I just worry that we are not taking into effect the full impact of pushing it on everything you turn on as a DraftKings ad or one of the others. And I just have some concerns that it's a little bit of the Wild West. Like my two biggest concerns as we wrap is sports gambling. How will that Wild West manage, and college sports? I'm sure we have a bunch of IU fans or Purdue fans. I think July 1st, when Georgia and Florida as states have name, image, and likeness legislation that is separate from NCAA or federal legislation, I think the Wild West opens up, and I think college sports is going to change forever. I don't know if it's for the better. It's for the better of the athletes, but I have big worries about where college sports is going over the next 5 years, and I hope that right here in Indianapolis, the NCAA can step in here and level the playing field so that it's fair for all student athletes, all teams, all schools, public and private, that choose to play at this level, and the alums, because you want to see, look what IU's been doing in football. This is great. You just want to see them continue to bring the energy and the positivity to the university.
Mike Tirico, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, to be invited to wrap up the season.
Yeah.
I'm usually the closing act because nobody wants to follow, because it's really hit the bottom when they've come to me
That is
on the
not
guest
true.
list. Yes,
Not
it is.
true.
No.
But thank you both, and I mean everything I say about Allison. What her impact, the type of person she is, the things she has done for Indianapolis, and anytime an email or a call shows up with Allison, it's like, yes, I'll do whatever, because, and a lot of us feel that way because she's one of a kind. So just lucky to have you as a friend, and thanks for all that you've done for not just us, but all of us in general.
Well, thank you for those kind words. And Mike's an incredible broadcaster, but he's an even better person. He's an
Sweet.
incredible human being.
Thank you.
Thank
It's
you
great
for
to be with you.
coming.
And
It's been a lot of
congratulations
fun.
on your presidency too.
Oh, yes.
Is
yes.
this the end? Or is, do we
Well,
have another
I
term?
actually have agreed to be president again next
Oh,
year for
right.
the Economic Club, so that
Right.
continues. And with that, I want to thank everyone who tuned in today, especially our group of platinum sponsors. We appreciate it. A recording of today's presentation, along with all the presentations for the season, is at economicclub.com. And the next season kicks off, I think I mentioned it, on September 8th. We will have Mark Morial, president of the National Urban League, to talk with. Have a wonderful summer and come out to Carb Day. Thanks.